Car order. It's always been car order.
I strongly disagree.
That's the way it is. Rip him out through the window in a nice way.
Just so I can go down and drink a carton while everyone punches on.
Just pisses me to tears. That's the worst thing you can do.
You shut up, you hack. Talking about boat ramps, this is what I wanted to get through from the start. What he said.
Oh, you just been an idiot.
And welcome to the Chumming Up Podcast, the fishing, spearfishing and ocean adventure podcast that is like a cheap Chinese restaurant in the 90s because we just catch cats fucking everywhere. I am Squirly, and with me, as always, is Leewold. Mitchell, how you going, big horse? We smashed the catfish.
You did, yeah. I don't see it as that. I wouldn't even tell people that. That's deduct points for catfish.
Mate, we fished 3 species today, and I won 2 of the 3.
Yeah,
right?
the only one you didn't win was Barramundi.
Yeah, the shit one that everyone can get. But I won the sooty grunter and I won the catfish. And your negative scoring is fucking ridiculous.
Mate, that's the rules. Catch a catfish, it takes a fish away from your total.
If the AFLW were playing on your scorebook, that'd be in fucking negative every game.
I think they pretty much are. Anyway,
yes, not far up. Anyway, do you want to introduce our guest? We're still in the Kimberley.
We are still in the Kimberley. So we've got a cracking guest this RV. We've got Damo on with us, and he's part of the stocking for the up-and-coming, or, depending who you talk to, already established fishery of Lake Kununurra, which I think is taking the Barra fishery scene by storm. It is just so different to any stocked fishery. It runs, the fish fight hard, they grow big, and honestly, there's bugger all people fishing it, isn't there? So it's like pretty sweet, you know.
Yeah.
Makes it hard for us because we've got no one to follow, but
Yeah.
But guys like Damo know how to fish it, so good to have you on, Damo.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, mate. So the stocking, how long's it been going on for?
Formally, since about 2012. So what's it? 11 years now.
Yep.
We started 12 to 15, and then we had a hiatus for a few years just with funding issues, etc., etc. We're a completely volunteer group, so we don't get any kind of funding except less it mostly comes through grants, etc., from the government.
Yep.
Like Fish West, all those kind of people. So we had a 3-year break from 15 to 18, and then about from 18 onwards, we've had consistent stocking. So that's the key to the stocking program, is a consistent stocking. So at the moment, we're in our last year of a 3-year grant, so we've got 400,000 fish a year generally. At the moment, we've got about 200,000 left for this year, and then we'll have to roll it over into our next funding model.
Yeah, okay, so we need more money.
Yes. We've done an EBS, economic benefit study, so I say conservatively because the data collection was impacted by COVID.
Yeah, fuck.
So
yes, everything was.
Yeah, exactly, mate. So we didn't get a lot of interstate data. We know there's a lot of people coming from interstate, but we didn't capture that data for obvious reasons, couldn't get in.
Yep.
At the moment, that's anywhere from $7.6 to $7.9 million a year it brings in the lake.
Yep.
So it's a very good economic return.
Yeah, shit. Well, that probably doesn't have the lures that I lost in the last 2 days as well. So
yeah, there's 10 mil.
There's 10
only because they're all fucking mine.
Yeah, they're all Leewolds lures. So we'll add that to the fucking title.
Yeah.
But that might be the next thing. Someone's got to get paid to chop down the trees.
I've seen guys diving the wood through here. So yeah, there's people that scalp and pick those up. So.
Fucking good luck to them. Yeah. I've seen the crocodiles here.
No, in the lake there's no saltwater.
Oh yeah, in the lake.
The lake's a saltwater exclusion zone, so there's constant traps, and if there's any crocs, they remove them ASAP.
Yep.
Same as Darwin Harbour. It's a crocodile free zone.
Yeah, so that's one thing I'm actually spewing about because I just towed my spearfishing gear, all my freediving gear around the country, and then I give it to my old man over at Early Beach in Queensland and said, I won't be using it across the top end because there's it's crocodiles. And then got here and I'm like, I've hit some spots with me sounder that's just choked with fish and I can't get them to bite. And I'm like, I wish I had my mask and flippers so I could hop in and just have a look at them.
Mate, there's a famous video taken pretty much where you had your boat parked until recently where a guy was diving and a big school of barra come up and had a look at him.
Yeah, see, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's another cool thing. You don't get to do that, like free diving and stuff. You know, the lake can be quite deep as well. You know, it's like 15, 20 metres in places, probably deeper than that.
Yeah, the average is about 7 metres. If you go up to a couple of the big catfish holes are about 20, 25 metres, so there's a good bit of depth through there.
Yeah, them catfish holes get me. I think we might have found one today, and then you got the live on the boat, and you think, oh yeah, you know, this thing's a real benefit, and all you see is these massive fish with massive shadows swimming around, only to find out they're catfish. So it's actually cost me a bit of time more than anything.
No,
I think you have to work on your catfishing, mate.
there's definitely some big catfish, which is another byproduct, obviously minus the spines, but there's a commercial catfishery in Lake Argyle, so you can eat them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of locals particularly talk about how they're better than barramundi.
Well, yeah, I mean, most people don't eat freshwater barramundi. That's their personal preference. But, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of catfish. And cobbler, if you come across cobbler down south, that's the catfish out of Lake Argyle.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was one thing I was saying on the menu the other night. What's the difference between silver and golden cobbler?
Just a species.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
It's a different species.
There's a number of catfish species, yeah, like fork-tail catfish and things like that. So there's a number of freshwater species of catfish, so, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, okay. There you go. I thought it might have been a difference between like fresh and salt, but
It can be. Yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of local names. A lot of guys, a lot of people catch catfish out in the salt because there's plenty of catfish.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they go hard, so yeah.
They
there's plenty of
pull
freshwater species.
so hard.
Yeah.
They are that tough. And the other crazy thing about them catfish, are like the 80, 90 centimetre, the metre long ones, is they will actually boof your lure, like implode it. So you're just fishing and it's like boof. And you're like, oh, I'm on here.
Yeah.
And then it's just pulling like buggery. You're like, this thing is going to be a giant. And then it doesn't jump and you can't pull it up. And it's like the brain starts going. You're like, oh.
Some of the best fishing I've had in the lake is generally in the mornings is when the catfish start slurping and slapping on the top of the water. Obviously, it just triggers the rest of the fish to feed, and the barramundi will switch on because obviously it's a little bit of competition and they're happy to feed and there's plenty of food. So if you see catfish swimming around, slurping and jumping and smacking and they're feeding, get in it, throw some lures.
Wow. That actually makes a lot of sense because when we fished the East Alligator, it was runoff fishing, so there was like your little buddy drains of fresh water running in. And one on the way out particularly had catfish. Oh, they weren't that big, but it was that thick you could walk on them. They were just like boiling, and I'm like, oh my God. And we went out there, and the fishing was really good. Next day, went out past that drain, not a fish. Fishing was just terrible, barely lucky to get a bite. So it was real indicator species type thing.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, being an idiot, I'd see catfish and probably think I've got to fish away from here sort of thing.
No, they'll hang.
There you go.
I got plenty of situations where you're watching the barramundi herd them up.
Yeah, right.
You'll see a barramundi or two at the front, and then you'll see a couple in the back. I mean, I've only got side imaging. I don't have live scope and that, but you can still watch it.
Yep.
And you'll see the barramundi like a wolf pack come in and smack a few catfish. There's no problems with the barramundi eating catfish head first as normal. And if you had Kurt here the other night, you'll see his lures. There's a lot of catfish imitations for that reason.
There is, yeah, and it sort of makes me feel a little good because if they're used to eating something that spiny, the ones that I drop might come back for another nibble. Maybe.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Kununurra for?
I've been living here since 2010.
Yep.
I've been coming to Kununurra since the early 90s. I went to uni in Darwin, and one of my mates up there was from Kununurra, so I've always sort of been coming to Kununurra.
Yep. Just from the fishing or just...
Back then, obviously, we didn't have the lake established in that respect. I mean, there's obviously barramundi all around, but the lake was constructed in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yep.
So if we look at stocking from 2012, that's a big gap.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys know that there's a couple of dam walls here. It's not an impoundment. It's a lake, so it's an irrigation system effectively. So the Ord River, roughly 320 kilometres long, is dammed, and it's dammed for an Ord irrigation project. So that's why it was dammed in the 60s, and it still continues to be an irrigation system. But it's a dammed river, and it always has a constant flow, so it's not an impoundment.
Yep.
And the only other thing we have with that is the diversion dam, which is the dam gates in town here. They're always open at some capacity.
Yeah,
so
okay.
We've always got that constant flow. And obviously, when we get a big wet season, they'll open they can open all the gates up. They've done that before, depending on the big wet season.
Yep.
But there's always water regulation. There was generally two flows, an environmental flow and a hydro flow, because in the old days, when Argyle Diamond Mine was operating, that used the hydro at Argyle Dam Wall itself upstream. So Lake Kununurra's 55 k's long, not very wide, but very long. So that hydro was to supply the mine, and some of that hydro was also supplying power in town. So there's always water, and there's always a flow.
Yeah, right. So just going back onto the stocking, like how did it come about to start with? Was there a push for a while, or is that just locals?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. I mean, essentially, there's always been barramundi in the system.
Yep.
If you talk to the old people, they'd always catch barramundi up in the hills. So you're talking right up the Dunham, right up the top of the Ord River, which is effectively out towards Warman, if you know what that is on a map. So the catchment sort of Warman Halls Creek, and then it flows into Lake Argyle. It's dammed, and then it comes into Lake Kununurra, and then it goes out the Ord into the false mouths, the mouths of the Ord. So there's always been barramundi in the system.
Yep.
And they would always travel up and down as barramundi do. And then it's just the damming, the two dam walls. Obviously, the barramundi could get, obviously if they're up the top end, they could come downstream and get out. They just couldn't get back in. Yeah. So there's always been that issue with a one-way migration, and there's always been that issue as how do we get barramundi to come back upstream. So in the old days, Dick Passfield was instrumental in establishing the stocking program, and back in the early 2000s we looked at some fish ladders, etc., but it was just too much money, and the infrastructure is owned by water corporations, so it's just another level of authorizations, permits, etc.
Yep.
So what we've got now is basically a basic system. We get permits from fisheries to collect the smaller fish. Obviously barramundi change sex at a certain size, generally 85 centimetres and above. They're majority females.
Yep.
We've obviously got size limits here in WA, 55 to 80 centimetres. So if they're more than 80 centimetres, you've got to put them back. And obviously the big fish are the girls, so they're the breeders. So you want the really big fish to go back. So we get permits from fisheries. Sometimes we only need 7 to 10 fish. We get small fish, obviously males, 35, 40 centimetres. We just put them on a trailer. ICBs pumped with oxygen. Got tanks around them. Go to Broome TAFE. Broome TAFE breed them up. All they do is change the water temperature to get them to breed. Yep. So they can do that a couple of times a year, depending on when we want fish released, etc. And then we just simply truck them back on the back of a trailer. And then we just back them into the lake here, run fresh water, because they're all grown in salt water. Salt water is a lot easier to manage the fish. So if you're getting...
for diseases and whatnot.
Yeah. And also if you're getting... It's just a lot easier with DO and stuff like dissolved oxygen and stuff like that. Just reduces the stress that fresh water can have on them.
Yep.
And then we just back the trailer down, run it climatise into fresh water, and then we just disperse them up the lake.
Yeah,
so
shit.
It's not really technical. It's just the process of getting the smaller fish and breeding them up. And if you're ever in Broome, you go down to the wharf there where the big empty fuel tanks and that's where the Broome TAFE is.
Yep.
So if you just give them a buzz, you can go in there and see the fish in the tanks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fuck, that's
something
cool.
I need to do.
Great for the kids.
Yeah. The barramundi going to Broome TAFE. Do you think they're the smartest animals to have ever gone to a WA TAFE? that's
well, they come back to Kununurra, so that's questionable. But no, look, they tell, well, in Broome TAFE, they do obviously, they look after all the hatchery side of things and the research, etc. And they tell us we've got the best genetics in the country. So when we get really good wet seasons, the growth and breeding proliferates exponentially. So
yeah, shit.
We're obviously a bit further south on the top end, so we don't really have the floodplain structure like they do up around the top end of Darwin.
Yep.
So, in the old days, we probably had a bit more floodplain than we do now because of the damming of the Ord. But if we get a decent wet and it fills up places like Parry Creek Lagoon, etc., you might get 2 weeks of runoff. But, the river, like I said, there's a constant flow in the river. So a lot of this top end of the river here would have dried up. So originally that was Bandicoot Rock Bar, from memory. Bandicoot, I got that wrong.
That is the Division Dam.
Yeah, where it is.
Yeah,
it's Bandicoot Rock Bar.
Yeah, so it was originally a rock bar. And then this apparently was the longest billabong in the Kimberley from here upstream, because you've obviously got pockets of that gorge country that's really deep.
Yeah.
And then the top end of the Ord River, it's 320 k's long, would have obviously dried up in the dry season to a series of rock pools.
Yep.
And then at the moment, if you know where Manby Island is, that's Manby Boat Ramp, which is just above Manby Island. That's about the extent of the tidal influence.
Yeah, right.
So natural tidal influence. Obviously, as the big tides push up, you'll get a bit of a backup with the water coming down.
Yep.
But originally, all that area around Manby Boat Ramp would have been probably most likely the extent of the salt water coming up the river naturally in the ebbs and flow of the tides.
Fuck.
Yeah, so funny you say that. We talked about that today, and the Bandicoot Rock Bar, the wall, was very interesting to me because obviously in front of it, there's like a couple of false rock bar type things that are natural. So, and most crossings or whatever, the culverts and that are formed on them main bits because that's
Correct.
the easiest bit to build them back in the day too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you believe that the original large billabong that is now the lake, did it run out all year or did it just run and then stop?
It would have just depended on the wet season.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
we don't get as much rain as Darwin. So Darwin's about 1.6 metres. We're about 800 mils here.
Yeah, okay, yep.
So we don't get cyclones this far inland. They just turn into lows by then. So we do get rain here. Obviously, depending on where it falls in the catchment.
Yeah, it's a large catchment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it will dry up into a series of pools where if you get a decent wet season, it would probably trickle through to the next wet season.
Yeah,
It just depends on the rain. But if you look at the system now, you've got Ivanhoe Crossing.
Yep.
So that's a natural rock bar.
Yep.
And then if you go down from that, you've got the Buttons Crossing I was talking about before. So there's a bunch of rock bars down there. So if you launch your boat at Buttons, you can't go upstream much because it's a rock bar. And then you can't go downstream much because you get what we call that D4 because that's where the diversion dam 4 comes out. So that's basically the exit water from the farms.
Yeah.
That's another series of rock bars. So you would have had those intermediate spaces between those rock bars.
Definitely, yeah.
Some of those may have held water. I mean, again, depends on the floods and how much they scour out and how deep it is. But but like I said, now we've got a consistent flow.
Yeah.
So you'll always have water in the Ord River.
Yeah, wow. It's really cool because, like, especially for myself, after coming through the territory, I got to fish like the roper and the daily, and there was runoff. But then they're also both of the roper and the daily, particularly, are both perennial as well. They're spring fed.
Correct.
So you've got a freshwater side, like you're talking about at the Mamby Island there, and a saltwater side, and it mixes through naturally as well. But then you've got other ones that have runoff and others that are just salt water.
Yep.
And I think for me, and I'm sure for everyone else that's addicted to barramundi, is that's half the addiction. It's not just about going out there and catching a meter 20 or whatever, which don't get me wrong, I want one, but the adventure of fishing those different fisheries and trying to nut them out and like going back into the lake here. I think that's what's so cool to me. I was lucky enough to fish it first and then go over to the East Coast and fish their impoundments. And I wasn't as thrilled with them, to be honest, as I am this, I think, because it runs and it's like more like a wild fishery.
And the difference here is you've got 24-hour fishing. So 7 days a week, whenever you want to go fishing, you can fish here.
Yeah.
The lake's always full. It might drop a foot or two, and that's regulated by the water court, but it's always water in it, and there's always water flowing down the Ord River. So if you want to fish the lake, and the beautiful thing about this time of year is if you've got kids, you don't have to get up too early. A lot of the time now you'll start catching the fish about 8 because it sun's up a bit later. We should be on Darwin time, but we're not.
I did notice that.
So, it's and we generally get a lag here as well because the water's coming from Lake Argyle. So if it's starting to if the water temperatures in Darwin, as an example, are starting to drop, we'll get a lag of up to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then, so that allows us to get really good fish. A lot of the really big fish I've caught have been at the end of June about 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, wow.
You can fish at night if you want, but if you're like me and have small kids, it's not always practical. And a lot of the times, if you get a couple of hours off, we're all 5 minutes from the boat ramp. Depending on where you go, it's a 10-minute steam to your snags. You just go to your snag, catch a few fish. The kids can have a couple of casts, get fish, take them for a swim, crocodile free. Can't beat it.
It is pretty good, and it actually is. Like what you're saying is dead right. It's not this really hard that barra fishing can be for a family. It's
And the beauty is, if you come like you guys and stay, you just only have to put your boat in once for the whole trip because you can just moor it up on the bank there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're at the Discovery Park here at the moment doing this podcast, and it's right on the lake. Exactly what Damo's saying. We put the boat in, leave it there, and all of that is part of that stocking, isn't it? This park's getting a little bit of it. We come here, me and my son Harvey come here 3 years ago, and we've been back every year since, and I've brought other people with us. We've got Squirly here now. It is as good as what you think it can be, and so are the people. The joint's unreal, mate. There's most places you go to are overrated, and this is the total opposite. As a town, as everything, like yourself, everything about it. It's the total played undercard, like it's not a big deal, like it's the true Australian. It's like, oh yeah, not a big deal. And you're like, not a big deal. I just seen a 5 meter croc today and we caught like 4 barramundi and we went out for an hour.
Yeah.
Now we can go to the pub for lunch or the hoochery.
Yeah. And like 5 catfish and a couple sooties.
Or you can go fishing in the morning in the lake, pull up at the boat ramp, walk a couple hundred metres to the pub, have lunch and get back up and go back fishing in the afternoon.
Yeah,
that's right.
Or if you want, you can camp up the lake. There's plenty of places to camp up the lake.
Yeah, that's right. Or pull up, like literally tie up to the jetty at the pump house, have a bloody a high class meal.
Oh,
It's top
mate,
class.
that meal there is fucking unreal. Like, Rob paid for it, which Leewold's old boy, which made it even fucking better. But
Well, the beauty is you can throw a bit of bread over and watch the Barramundi come and smack it.
Yeah.
So and that's one of the most consistent spots for fishing is that wood right there.
Yeah.
So again, you don't have to go far at all. I can bring my boys out, drop the boat on, have a few casts, catch some fish, and be home within an hour, mate. Perfect.
Yeah. So going on that, like you're talking about with your young boys, Damo, obviously I know you half well, and you're an avid lure fisherman. You and I can see your young children are lure fishers as well. That must be so rewarding when you can take the kids out, not just in the lake, but anywhere around here and do just outdoorsy stuff. I see them catching frillneck lizards and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of Kununurra and the Kimberley. For those that don't know, the Kimberley's twice the size of Victoria and there's 40,000 people, so it's big. And that's one of the reasons we live here is because there's not many people here and there's no boat pressure or anything like that. So, yeah, and exactly that. I grew up trout fishing as a kid. Like most of us, we grew up in Victoria and escaped there as quick as we could.
It does seem that way. Everyone seems to be a Victorian here.
But my first memory was catching trout in the Latrobe River just out the back of Nuji. My dad's a Warrigal boy, if you know what that is. So that's where I used to spend a lot of my time was walking those small mountain streams, casting lures.
Yep.
Back in the old days with just bladed selters and Jensen insect lures. It's obviously developed a lot more now. My motto is no bait boat. So if you like bait fishing, you're not welcome in my boat. and using bait's cheating. So, and that's just me. That when I first got here, there wasn't a lot of guys that lure fished. I was probably the first one to come in with a Minn Kota, so everyone was in my boat. And then they've progressively upgraded to side imaging. I've always had Hummingbird side imaging, not to be brand, but I just started with them because I had the first side imaging. And I've just always been a lure fisherman. Spot lock's your favourite tool on the boat.
Yep.
Apart from your sounder, obviously. But spot lock's perfect. And then just cast. I don't see anything better than just casting lures. It's kind of a spiritual journey for us. Lots of technique in it, lots of skill, and again, you can apply any kind of barramundi technique here you want. So whether you want to use bait through to lures, whether they're soft plastics, swim baits, all that kind of stuff, I've got all that gear, and there's no issues here with trawling.
Yep.
A lot of guys don't like trawling, but trawling is an art, and it really teaches you to use your sounder. And then the positive thing with that is you're covering a lot of ground, so you're learning your habitat. You're learning where the snags and rock bars are.
Yep.
So basically, it's more of a purpose than catching fish. You're actually looking at the country, and that's one of the biggest issues. Is you got to find the fish. They move and they travel, so you got to find them.
Yeah, I'd say. I'll make it clear every time I speak on fishing. I'm anything really. I'm a fucking idiot. But just being here for like 3 or 4 days, I've learned a heap about fishing, like different ways, and it's continuous here. It's a great place to hone everything. Different lures, different way what you're fishing. Reading the water.
Yep. I mean, I grew up trout fishing, so we didn't have decent sounders back then. I'm an 80s kid. I grew up in the 80s. I was born in the 70s, so technology wasn't like today. So that's the first thing you had to do when you went trout fishing was read the lay of the stream from the surface water, ripples and eddies and all that kind of stuff. So I still apply all those rules here.
Yep.
Obviously, I don't have all the flash live scope or a 360 or anything like that. I'll get that at some point. But you got to learn the basics.
Yeah.
And as I said, you're fishing some parts you fish 20 metres, some parts you fish in the surface water. So, like I said, you can go through your soft plastics, your vibes, your deep. Like one of the best lures here is a crazy deep 8 metres. You can run that deep, or you can run it across the surface as long as you know what you're doing. So there's a whole. You can, like I said, you can employ all the different varieties of fishing. So it's not boring.
And I think that's pretty much the addiction of lure fishing, the same as yourself with the Minn Kota in the water and having a cast or whatever, is when you've got a couple of guys on the boat, there's always something to be learnt.
Yep.
Where you're like, okay, we've sounded them, they're holding hard to the bottom and it's 6 metres deep. I'll just hit them with vibes, and you think that. And then the guy you're fishing with just goes, I'm going to use a poltergeist and crash it into the bottom. So, you're an idiot. And then you start getting out fishing. You're like, oh my God, I've just learnt something here. There's always, I love that, where someone will do something in a rapids fishing or a back eddy or whatever, and you're like, I would never fish like that. And then they outfish you and you're like, and I love that side of it where, I'm a commercial fishing, so I've done more bait fishing than near on anyone on this planet. And you get guys that think they're doing something different, but they're just the luckiest one on the draw. So it's like, you just don't get that side of it. And I love that.
And I think we seen that today when I just started cleaning up on the catfish. You had Leewold just scrambling over the boat like a fucking rock crab, trying to scramble on to get the same sort of lure.
And look, to me, barramundi's a thinking fish. You can go out and catch 20 fish one day, and you can go back to the same snag, and there's 30 fish there, and you won't catch one.
Yeah, and that's what's cool.
Yeah, and so to me, barramundi fishing, you got to think. You always got to be on your toes. You always got to think. And people ask me what I do when I go fishing. If I'm in the boat by myself, I've got 8 to 10 rods. I'll have all my lures on the casting deck. A lot of it to here comes down to a very narrow bite time. They're obviously very well fed, exceedingly well fed, so they don't really have to compete for food.
Yep.
So you might get a 10, 15 minute bite window. So if I get a barra, the last thing I'm doing is mucking around for 10 minutes to get the next rod or just re-rig it because your leader's chafed and all that kind of stuff. And again, plenty of times I've thrown a big plastic out, run it exactly the same place, put another same lure on, different colour, bang.
Yeah.
So you just always got to be
cool.
changing. And, I fish with Nick Allen a lot. I'm a trout fisherman, like I said earlier, so I always downsize, whereas Nick would always upsize. So as Lee said, there might be a couple of guys in the boat and you're always changing tricks, and then as soon as one of you work out what the fish want, you just automatically change to that. That might work for 10 minutes and then they'll shut down, and then you got to find something else. So yeah, you really got to think in barramundi fishing.
And that's what's so cool when it's not, there's so many guys you hear that it's like, you need to catch a metery or whatever, which is great. But it doesn't have to be about that. You can catch a 65 centimetre fish that like you said, you've looked at the lay of the land and you've gone, it's rained a lot, temps dropped. I think they'll be sitting in this eddy. You throw a few things at them and then you go, maybe because of whatever, they're eating prawns, and you tie one on and chuck it in and get one. And it's just like, what I thought they were going to do, they did. And it's so rewarding. It's not about the fish having to be on Instagram and be the biggest and best one. It's just awesome, And
that's the beauty about the smaller fish here, particularly with kids and that. They're just bowling balls. So I never measure a fish. If I see if I've hooked a fish, I never call it until I put on the brag mat, because a lot of the time the girth is just as long as the length. And
I get that.
I've caught.
No, you don't.
That's it.
1 inch.
The gap is the same as the length.
So yeah, I got
never very impressive.
And that's what's good about fishing, is you can have a bit of shit with your mates as well. Always catching fish, have a bit of fun. But yeah, like I said, your kids can catch a 65 and it pulls like a train, because they're very, like I said, they've got best genetics. They're very well conditioned. They know where the wood is. They know how to get off. They know how to fight.
Yeah,
so 65 fish is a 90 for comparatively elsewhere.
Yeah,
exactly.
I haven't done much barramundi fishing before, but the barra I caught was 80 something, and then I think it was early 70 centimetre fish I caught here, bigger.
Yeah.
Like just the bulk, the size, more impressive looking fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit weird how some fish are measured with length. Like barramundi is always length, whereas a trout, I don't want to hear about... A coral trout, sorry, we're talking different trout. But a coral trout, I never want to hear about the length of a coral trout, it's the weight.
Yeah.
But then when I look at these barramundi,
well, barramundi was weight.
Yeah.
But now that the release has become about length.
Yeah.
But,
And it was always, when I was a kid, everything was weight, and then now it's all length.
Yeah.
But, what's barramundi, 50 pound or something it used to be? This joint, this is the joint to get them,
Well, I've caught fish. I've caught 125s that's taken 2 of us to lift up.
Yeah. Right.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have a biggest that you've...
In the lake, 125.
Yeah, right.
So I've caught lots of 116s.
Yep.
Lots of 117s around that area. Lots of, like I said, what you also find is pigeon pairs. So you can be up in the lake somewhere, and what I found very quickly, it should apply to all sounders, is you'd pull up on a spot and spot lock, and then the 2 biggest fish would come up and do a circle.
Yeah.
So they're obviously attracted to the pinging.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whether you want to get into an argument, whether you leave your sounder on or not, I always leave mine on because I've got side imaging. You're always moving a little bit to see where the fish in that are. Maybe you don't need to do that now with the live scope or the 360, but really it's the same thing because it's an echo sound. It's
Same.
But you used to get the really big fish come up to the sounder, and a lot of the time you'd hook those fish right at the transom. So rule number 1 is don't ever stop the action on your lure until it's out of the water.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time they'll just sit there. And obviously if you've got side imaging, if they're not going to be in the bandwidth because they're sitting right below it.
Yep.
Or just back off it. But yeah, you'll get a lot of big fish just come up. Kind of like marlin fishing, mackies. Put your trolling lure right in the wash. The noise gets them up. So you can apply those rules. But yeah, And then you'll see. I mean, I can tell a fish pretty much straight away what size it is because there's only two types of fish. It's either a barramundi or a catfish that big, and they look completely different. But over the years, when you start looking at them and you start catching them, I can size fish straight away. So I'll go up the lake and I'll say to guys, there's 65s, 90s, there's 120s, or there's a 130. So
Yeah,
you can see
right.
that. And you can see them mixing in.
Yep.
And, your first cast, you might get a 120, and then you might get a couple of 60s. So you're never guaranteed. One example I got at 63, and the next cast straight away was a 103.
Yeah.
So you get a variety of fish.
So when you're saying obviously about the growth rates too, you have like evidence to back up with tagging and whatnot. Is there how particularly in the lake, how old is what's thought to be a metre long fish?
Well, we've got data that suggests they can be 119 in 3 years.
Jesus Christ.
That's obviously the top of the curveball.
Yeah.
But still.
But
holy.
But comparatively, we get the fish growth here is exceptional.
Yeah.
So we know we've done tagging, but tagging's good, but it's a small recapture rate.
Yeah.
The last batch of tags I had was about 150 tags, and we used all those tags, and we've got fish back. But considering how many barramundi we stock in the lake and how big the systems are, and we know fish go down through the gates, and we've got tag fish that have been caught downstream, so it's a natural process there anyway. We can't do anything about that. But we know from the data, the data suggests that the fish that are caught in the lake and stay in the lake, the growth rates are phenomenal. No. Whereas we've caught tag fish that have been tagged in the lake and then been re-tagged in the Ord.
Yep.
And they're nowhere near as...
Yeah, not as quick.
Not as quick. There's
and
obviously
I
a
can
differential in
that.
food, yeah.
Well, and also the fish is transient, so it's not doing the things that the fish stay in. But you look at, like you're talking about your side imaging. When I first fished the lake, I was hitting spots with my side imaging sounder and going, oh, they could be small barramundi. And then later to see with my own eyes them swim around, they're bony, Brim. They're like literally 50 centimetre or more bonies. They're massive.
It's huge fish.
So the food they're eating is like...
And
it's just Jurassic Park.
A metre barramundi will happily take on an 80 centimetre barramundi. They're called bucket mouths for a reason. They're not shy. If they can get it in their mouth and get it down, they will. So there's plenty of food here. And really, once they get to a certain size, probably 55, right on that legal limit, there's no real predators. Catfish will take the smaller fish.
Yep.
Obviously, catfish eat anything, but obviously when the barramundi get too big, they won't be able to take them. So once they get to a size, there's no predators.
Yeah.
The lake's full of freshwater crocodiles, completely different mouth system to saltwater crocodiles. Really big freshwater crocodiles, because we get really big freshies here, they'll only take a small fish.
Yeah.
They're not designed for big fish like a big saltwater croc. So really, once they get to that size, there's no competition.
Yeah.
They'll just grow and die.
Yep.
And it's obviously working too, because like you said, you're whacking 150 tags in a season into fish and getting a minimal recapture, but you're still catching a lot.
Yeah, we still catch
So
them.
it's not as though, those fish are going anywhere. It's just that a lot of fish are surviving and growing large in this lake.
Yeah, look, we just don't have the funding or the resources to do a lot of tagging. We have had electrofishers come down, but they could only zap to 3 metres. So if a barramundi's sitting deeper, it's not going to get zapped and knocked out. So a lot of the tagging has been manual tagging, and a lot of the time I'll just come down here in front of the caravan park in September, because they'll all start coming downstream in the build-up, and you're just picking up. You can basically target what fish you want. So if you want to target 55 fish, you target them. If you want to target the bigger fish, you target them. So you get a broad spectrum. But yeah, the data that we look at, and there's not a lot of data, to be honest, across the country, but the Daily River's done a lot of work, so the NT government, and there's 3 types of fish. There's the fish that they've tagged in the same 50-metre radius.
Yep.
Doesn't move, it's happy, and it's happy to, it obviously survives the tagging process. And, we've had fish here tagged a few times and they've been caught, so there's no issues with the fish stressing. There's no issue with barra trauma or anything like that. So they survive really well. They're very tough fish.
Yep.
There's the fish, the classic barramundi, they go up and down the system, go down, breed, and then come back up. And then the third type of fish is the fish that go down the system and breed, and then they'll sit on the headlands, and they generally school as the same size fish. So without giving away too many secrets, there's a number of people in the territory that will fish the mouths of rivers, but the headlands adjacent to them in the build-up and the wet seasons, because that's where the fish sit. So that's what the data says. So there's always going to be resident fish, and obviously, if there's plenty of 130s in here, they've never left. They can't. Any barrel of money that goes through the damn gates cannot get back up. There's no facilities yet. We don't have salmon guns or anything like that, like they do in the States.
Yep.
So they're happy to stay here. So
yeah, right.
It's difficult to understand the ratio or the mortality or the fish that go through the gates. We get the fish over at 50 mils. The data indicates that that's not a problem. The issue you get with bigger fish is you've got to grade them every couple of days because they're cannibalistic. So it just becomes a process of manual labour to grade them, and we just don't have that kind of money to do that. So that's generally why we get them over at 50 mils. And then we release them in the lake. It doesn't really matter where you release them, as opposed to in the middle or the habitat. The data indicates that it doesn't really have an impact. It's just getting them in there, and you get a few deaths obviously, but not a lot. They travel very well.
Yep.
So it's just what we need is that constant stocking. If we get that constant stocking, say, for example, 100,000 fish a year, there'll always be fish in the system and there'll always be that range of fish. So if you're not very good at Barramundi fishing, you can still come here and get lost to 65s. They pull hard.
Yeah.
And then if you want to challenge yourself and chase the 130s, there are going to be plenty of those as well.
Yeah, right. Fuck, that's awesome.
It's cool, isn't it? It is proper cool.
Yeah. Well, the thing... I don't know, my mind went to straight away when you're talking about the tagging and everything was the episode on this we had with John Prince about the DNA tagging at some point. Surely that becomes a thing.
Yeah, well, you would think that they probably, depending how the future goes, but the possibility would be there to fingerprint them for different age groups or whatever as they release them or whatever. Like,
That just comes down to
there's
funding.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, as anything goes.
Yeah.
And
And we-
hopefully it gets there. And like you said, Dick Passfield obviously come up with the original idea and that. And it's people like that change it for everyone else. You know, they know how good it is. But you guys are doing this not just for yourselves. Everyone gets it. You know, we're here doing it. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, that's part of the program is to get people to come and fish the lake.
Yep.
So it's one of the best fisheries in Australia. Fair enough, it's remote, but that's part of the
That's
appeal.
the best part.
But that's the thing. That's the holiday. Like, that's what
Exactly.
you want.
Yeah, and it's
You know?
beautiful scenery.
Oh,
Yeah.
mate.
There's not
it's
many
an
people in
amazing
town.
joint.
You're not getting, not to be derogative, but as an example, if you go fish Mary River system, you got to get in line with hundreds of boats.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
don't have that problem here.
Yeah, and it doesn't have a bloody rum distillery there either.
No, well, we've got the best rum in the country. All the rum.
We drank the rum last night.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll agree with you. That is bloody good rum.
no,
Yeah.
it's a good rum. It's won
Yeah.
lots of awards.
Yeah, fucking awesome little joint to go to.
Yeah,
I didn't piss myself, so
and like I said,
it's an extra tick.
That's a first.
Yeah, I know. It's that good of rum.
Yeah.
It was that good of rum I didn't want to waste standing on my mattress.
Plus, it's my mattress, so fucking don't.
that's it. And like I said earlier, I mean, this time of year, obviously, we're coming into the tourist season, so one off the back of the wet season, right through to the build-up. It's gentlemen's. You can fish at gentlemen's hours. You don't have to get up at Sparrows Farm.
Yep, I think you do here anyway, though, because it just feels good to get up at early, and you feel like it's really late at like fucking 8 o'clock. It feels like it's 12
Yeah,
because the sun goes down so quickly.
Yeah, and like I said, we should be on NT time in Kununurra, but WA couldn't handle that. Couldn't handle daylight savings for 3 years, so
Yeah,
yeah.
controversial.
So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of things like you guys have found out. You can fish the lake. You can go up to Lake Argyle. I mean, we spend days on Lake Argyle camping. You just pull up. There's no boats. It's just and at the moment it's it's just above capacity actually because it's spillways flowing. So it's anywhere from 6 times to 20 times greater than the Sydney harbour. So it's huge amounts of water.
Yeah,
It's
shit.
massive.
You've got good catfishing up there, and you got really good black brim. You sooties.
There's really good sooty fishing there, eh?
Yeah.
That's something I would really love to do. So I did I got as bycatch or not sort of fishing for them in Queensland for jungle perch,
Yep.
and I loved it.
Yep.
To me they're basically mangrove jack. I
Yeah.
can't see any difference.
Yeah.
Except for jacks get really big when they're way offshore and
Well-
a million years old. But they eat top water lures. They're super aggressive. They're cool as I think they're so underrated.
They are a great fish.
Yeah.
And, they're good to eat. So
Yeah,
if
I've
you wanna
heard
eat
that. So we talked about that too because Squirly got a nice one today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I
they're
think-
really good eating.
Yeah. I think like if you were going out and someone caught like a couple good ones of them, they'd probably having a better day than someone who does catch more barramundi.
Yeah, so
So
what'd you get? 2 barramundi and 2 sooties and a couple of catfish, and you had a better day than someone that caught 10
Well-
barramundi, are you?
I won 2 categories. You won 1. That's how I do my math. All right.
Yeah, so you got the lake, and then you've obviously got the Gulf. So you've got the Durack, Pentecost, you got the King, you've got you can go right out to the Berkeley, you've got the Lynn, the Thompson, or the
Yep.
False Mouths. It's just so much water out there. So there's a whole range of fishing options. And again, don't forget you've got the length of the Ord River. So
Is there any of those type of fishing that that you enjoy doing the most of? Do you like, as far as pushing up into like the Pentecost or anything like that? Is that?
Oh, look, there's plenty of fish in those systems. I'm a lure fisherman, so if anything, my preference is clear water.
Yep.
So we'll shoot down to the Thompson and Lynn or go into the false mouths, obviously a little bit further travelling, but we like the visual.
Yeah, right.
When you cast and lure, I mean, obviously, if you're throwing vibes a bit deeper into the wood, you don't get that visual.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, I love the visual, and if there's a school of 65s there and, there's 10 of them on the sound and you get 10 of them, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
Like Lee was saying earlier, it's not always about the biggest fish. It's just, to me, fishing's a spiritual journey.
Yep.
So, if you can sort of cast that lure and you're tricking a fish to bite an artificial lure and you see that big bucket mouth come out. I mean, again, I've caught barramundi in the lake, let alone in the salt, that are sweet mackerel. They'll hit the lure and come 10 feet out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you get all that variety of fishing.
Yeah.
Some fish don't jump. Some fish jump. That 125 I got jumped 6 times. So that's 30 odd kilos of barra coming out of the water.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I suppose that's the other thing with like fishing on the lake here is not only are you outsmarting the fish, you're outsmarting a TAFE educated fish. And you can't say that many other places in the world.
Yeah.
Pretty much everywhere. Anyone that's been to TAFE.
Yeah, it's dumbed them down.
I went to TAFE to get my skipper's tickets. I've been fucking outsmarted 9 times.
Oh, we're
10.
both TAFE educated people. It's an even playing field.
Yeah.
That's why it works.
Yeah, but you do have I think that's what draws me here, Damo, is you have so much adventure to be had.
Yep.
It's not about, going somewhere and it has to be this size fish or whatever. It's just, you can go to, like, I've been to places here where I get to talk to yourself and that, and I know you've explored it more than most, and I can go to a place here and still get the feeling that I'm the first person, not even white man, to have been there. I'm like, I don't think anyone's ever been here. This is amazing.
Yeah.
You
certainly don't have that pressure.
No, and and then you go home. Well, I go home thinking it. Like, I'm like, wow, I went and fished this spot, caught a couple of 50s out of it. I don't reckon anyone's fished that log or back eddy or whatever it is. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And, it's a not natural river. So, as you know, up here, they're full of red river gums and all the rest of the vegetation. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so much habitat.
Oh, the bird life and stuff. We're there every day. My kids have got a bird book, Australian Guide, and we've got it and we're reading it. And you lose half of your fishing day looking at, we're looking at crimson finches today.
Well, it's a Ramsar wetland. So you've
Yep.
got the lake here is a Ramsar wetland, then you got a Ramsar wetland and sanctuary down the front of the false mouths, all that area. So, yeah, wildlife's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
Absolutely phenomenal.
The boys thought I was going off about bites or fish at some stage today. I was just watching one of the small birds pinging at dragonfly, and the dragonfly dodging it 5 times, and then the bird nailing it.
Yep.
It's like,
And you go up,
this is fucking cool.
go up the gorge a bit, and you got all your rock wallabies and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, you can. It's a great place for kids because there's so many options to do. So, if they don't have the attention span like us for casting, throwing 1,000 casts in 10 hours, they don't need to have that here.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, fucking great joint. So, outside of the barramundi, obviously, that's what are the fish that you've caught that stand out? Not necessarily here, just through your fishing journey. Is there?
I was in Bunbury for a few years before I got up here, and I was riding to jigging.
Yep.
So we used to jig off the Cape, sambos, all that kind of stuff. Jewfish, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm not typically a bait fisherman.
Yep.
So I used to do the normal run to Exmouth, up through the Monties, all that kind of stuff. So any kind of sport fishing, lure fishing, I'm happy to. I've travelled right through Canada. I lived in Canada and Alaska, so I've done fishing up there. So I've done a heap of stuff.
What'd you get out of Alaska?
I travelled Alaska. I was in Canada studying black bears in Newfoundland.
Yeah, as you do.
When I finished uni, I went over there because you get a work visa.
Yep.
So I was in Newfoundland, which is famous for its rum.
Yeah, right.
So lots of every
Fucking,
Hello.
we're
That's
starting
how
to
you've
see a
ended up
pattern.
here.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense.
The fish.
I'm
Rum.
technically a Newfie because I've been screeched. Just Google that. That's the famous rum.
All right.
So yeah, I was chasing black bears. So my nickname over there was the Crazy Aussie. I was the first one onto the euthanized bear. If the bear wasn't quite out of it, I had to deal with it. But
Yeah, right.
But that's life, and it was a good job. And my younger son's name's Bjorn, which means bear. And just up the road was the earliest Viking settlement in North America. So the Vikings beat Columbus by hundreds of years. History
Yeah,
books are
right.
wrong. So yeah, that's where that connection to the Vikings comes in.
Yep.
So I did a lot of fishing in Alaska. I travelled to Alaska. I worked in the States for a few years, and my plan was to never work in Alaska. And Alaska is just like it's just wild, mate. So you see all those documentaries where you got rivers full of salmon and brown bears and black bears. It's better than that over there. It's just full on.
Yeah, wow.
And
Shit.
We would just hire a canoe.
Now I got to go there.
rivers,
Oh, I applied for a comedy festival there this year.
Yeah.
That comment just there, now I'm going there. Because that's the only thing that stopped me is everywhere, 99% of places are never what the postcard says, and now you've said it is, I'm going.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And funnily enough, the other place is New Zealand. I've spent a bit of time in New Zealand.
That's a ripper.
I went back to Alaska for the winter. Long story short, we shot down to Juneau, which is the capital of Alaska. You can only get in there by boat or plane. And we saw the first Lord of the Rings film. And I was sitting in a theatre full of Americans, and the scenery from New Zealand, Lord of the Rings, came on and just blew them away. So New Zealand's another place. And just you walk down the rivers and there's brown trout logs.
Oh, they're
New Zealand's
insane.
good.
Yeah.
I think Peak Sport Fishing from Exmouth put up some footage of the trout they were catching in
They're
New
just
Zealand.
monsters.
Fucking.
Yeah.
And they all got the Sarah Jessica Parker face, where it's all the big horse face on the fucking trout.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Fishing over there.
that's just a fucking game changer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just like I said, I grew up trout fishing, and it's just always progressed to be lure fishing.
Yep.
It's my style.
Yeah, cool. So do you have a fish, like an actual fish that you've caught where that's the one, whether like a barramundi or something like where it was, the effort that just sent you to another fucking level, the next fish?
Probably the one of the most memorable fishing episodes was out in the Mary River floodplains years ago on airboats. We were doing some conservation work out there, and we just cut a broomstick up and made some poppers. And because you're out in the middle of nowhere on the floodplains, and you're just watching these big barramundi tail through the shallows, and you're just catching them on homemade bloody lures.
Yeah, fuck.
And the guy up on top of the airboats just not shooting the crocs, but shooting up the crocs to keep them away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Just that, the complete and utter wilderness. So
Yep.
beautiful. And you got magpie geese and buffalo, and it's just amazing. Just
Yeah.
those really remote locations.
fuck yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So what about a fish you want to catch?
Oh, holy. I mean, we've actually talked about it here, but it's not technically a native, is the black bass.
Yeah.
So we've obviously we've discussed, probably shouldn't say this, but we've actually discussed mangrove jacks.
Yep.
Because mangrove jack is a native species and it survives in fresh water.
Yep.
Again, without giving too much away, it comes down to the grading. They're just a very aggressive fish. So to grow them,
Yeah,
like
fuck
if you were to grow them at TAFE, for example, or wherever you
Yep.
grow them,
Yep.
you need that manual labour to grade them because they're very aggressive. So they could survive in here quite well.
Yep.
Genetically, the black bass is very, very, very similar. So Lejanus, so your finger
Yep.
mark, all that kind of stuff, very, very, very close related. Just technically not a native fish. So
Yep.
yeah. So black bass would definitely be a bucket list, if I can use that term.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, they're that close. Like you said, they're very close. Where basically the black bass push up into the fresh to get very large, where the mangrove jack go out into deep
And finger
water.
mark will head out. Yeah. The
Yeah,
smaller
where
fish.
if they stayed in,
Yep.
you would have them 10-kilo fish. Because I've speared 10-kilo mangrove jack. I've
Yep.
caught them to, I think, 13 or 14 kilo.
Yeah.
If they were in the inside, it'd be the same as black bass. But
Yeah.
they reckon they just pull like nothing else.
Yeah.
I've seen videos of guys going do it and hooking 90-centimeter barra, and when it jumps, going, oh shit, barra.
yeah.
It's like good problem to have.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So that'd be good. And New Guinea's just a wild place. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's on the list.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Fuck yeah. Have you got anything?
No, I
Else to
reckon
us?
that was really cool.
Mate, this has been a wicked podcast. I don't know if you've got anything you need to say.
No, just come to Kununurra, come visit, and I don't know if you can certainly put I'm not on a lot of social media. I'm on Instagram.
Yep.
I've kept getting hassled by mates to get an Instagram account, but Lee's got that. So if you want to come in, I'm happy to catch up with people, run over maps, all that kind of stuff. Like I said,
Yeah, fuck, that's handy.
yeah, part of the job and part of the process and the reason for the stocking is to get people here and to get people to enjoy the Kimberley and to get people to catch some barramundi.
I think they fucking will.
Yeah.
If I can catch fish, fucking, it's hope for everyone.
That's true.
I just gave you a talent on catfish, mate. Shut up.
Nothing wrong with catfish. My son won the comp the Apex Barra comp with a 98 centimetre catfish. So
Yeah.
Fuck
it's not
yeah.
a bad
That's
catfish.
something I appreciate.
Yeah.
Good catfishman. All right, well, cheers, lads. Thanks for chumming up. That was a fucking wicked episode. And, yeah, cheers, lads.
Cheers.
No worries.
Oh my god, what the fuck is happening right now? Dolphin in the killer whale's mouth? Holy shit. Oh, this is the best day of my life, God. What?
I like going down the pond chasing bluegills, kamikaze.